Come here. Alright.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7, Katarina.
Katarina Elvis.
New challenger.
First fight of the day. First match of the day.
Get ready for the next battle.
Dragon up.
Round 1.
Cowboy.
Fight.
So hard to do it.
KO.
It's so hard to do it in the online match.
KO. Round 3.
He's a cowboy.
Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight.
What the heck?
KO.
Morra!
Corre de volta pra sua mamãe.
It's so hard to do it in an online match.
For the next battle.
What's this? What is it here? Morra!
Round 1. Fight. KO.
I'm flying.
Round 2. Fight.
Why am I ducking? forgot about Dragunov.
Round 3. Fight.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, what did I jump?
Round 4. Fight.
Ha! Why can't I do the forward thing? Better be safe.
KO.
Still can't do the down forward. Hang on. Ah, he quit. He quit. He quit. He quit. Stalagmite. Stalagmite, why you quit, man? Still got lots of rage quitting going on in second.
New challenger.
Can't believe it's already season 3 and they haven't done anything about rage quitting. This is gonna be hard. Daddy Flub Burger. 800 wins. And I don't know how to use Lee, so this is going to be a challenge. Let's sit down properly. Why is there a minion crying with blood?
Round 1.
Camille.
Fight.
Hey. Again. Again.
Yeah.
Oh la la.
Round 2. Fight.
Good. He knows it.
Round 3.
Camille. Nice.
KO.
I really hate walls.
Fight. Great. Final round. KO. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Get ready for the next battle.
Deixa eu...
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2.
Cause I'm an angel.
Fight.
Up there.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight.
Aisu, nice combo. I like it. Ooh. I can't move. He's so fast.
Final round.
Destroyer.
Fight. Perfect. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle.
Get ready for the next battle.
Also stream, by the way. Is it streaming nicely
Deixa
or
eu te testar pra ver se você luta de verdade.
de verdade?
Round 1. Fight.
Holy moly! I like his combo. I like his combo.
KO.
I like his combo.
Round 2. Fight.
Oh, my phone is noisy.
Perfect. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight.
Holy moly.
KO. Final round. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle.
Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. How about in Twitch? Are we live in Twitch right now? Oh. Oh. Yeah, we are. We are live in Twitch.
Round one. Fight.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Look at those combo.
Yeah.
KO. Round two.
My gosh.
Fight.
Yeah.
No, low.
Yeah.
KO. Round three. Fight.
Why did I move? Ah, it's lagging. It's lagging. It's lagging.
Yeah.
It's lagging too much.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Lagging.
Yeah.
Why is it lagging too much?
Round four. Fight.
Yeah.
Why am I jumping?
Yeah.
It's lagging too much. I can't see.
Final round.
Why is it lagging?
Fight.
Why did I move? Why is so lagging too much? It's lagging too much.
You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ。
楽しませてください。
Get ready for the next battle.
I really like Lee's combo. If I could just use him properly, I would use Lee. It's just that I can't do his timing.
Round one. Fight.
He knows it. Nope. Why it's so lagging? Ah, crap. I can't move.
Round two. Fight.
Yeah.
No, it's too laggy. Too lag.
Yeah.
It's so laggy.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't move properly.
Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah.
Not supposed to be. What the heck? Oh crap! I can't properly move. What the heck? Why am I jumping? Oh man.
You lose.
Excellent.
Get ready for the next battle.
It's not supposed to be laggy. It's like he's got 4 bars. Why? Parry an opponent's low attack by pressing down forward before it is about to hit. Okay. I always do that.
楽しませてくれるのだろう
He's got 4 bars. Why is it laggy? Oh crap.
Round 1.
See? He's got 4 bars.
Fight.
Oh, what the heck?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so... Oh crap. That won't do. Ah, come on. I can't win this fight. It's...
Round 2. Fight.
Wait. I love this combo. Don't. Ah, nice. That was a new one.
Round 3.
Why can't I move properly now? Ah, what? Ah, crap.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. Come on. I can't backward. Oh crap. I won't. I can't win. Alright, one more time. If it's still too laggy, we're gonna have to quit.
Excellent.
One more time.
Get ready for the next battle.
Bet he's having a hard time as well doing the combos. It's like there's a 1 second delay or something.
Round 1. Fight.
What the heck? Go backward.
Yeah.
Ah crap. It's still laggy. I can't do the... Can't do it. Oh no! Oh, it doesn't do it. Nah, this won't do.
Round 2. Fight.
Why did you do that? I'm like... Ah, there's too much delay on it. Oh. Look like the noob. Well, I'm still a noob.
Round 3. Fight.
I can't do it properly. Shit, that lag. It's fine. gonna be the last. No. What the heck? Even my backwards. Won't do. No, he doesn't forward. You're not supposed to grab that, you know. It doesn't do it. Oh man, that lag. Yeah.
KO.
I bet he's having a hard time as well.
Fight.
I mean, Lee is not that easy to use. Oh, what the heck am I doing? Doesn't do the backward thing. I'm dead. Oh, I'm not.
耐えられるかな
KO.
I'm still alive.
Final round. Fight.
Oh crap. I hate it when it's not doing the backward forward thing. I bet he's not enjoying it as well. Let's find it somewhere else. Although that was 4 bars. What's happening? I really can't do it. Ah! Oh, I did it. Oh, that was nice.
New challenger.
Oh, this is not gonna be laggy.
Get ready for the next battle.
My wrist hurts. Oh, it's him again. That's fine. Oh, it's not laggy.
Deixa eu te testar.
Round 1. Fight.
Oh crap, it's still the same. Oh crap. Not supposed to do that. Nope. Nope. Alright.
Great. Round 2. Fight. Perfect.
As much as I would like the challenge. I would like the challenge because I don't know how to use Lee. This is an experience, but the game is not.
Perfect.
Connection is too laggy. Can't even do back forward thing.
You lose.
楽しませてもらったよ
Oh no shimasu.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
New challenger.
Connection lost.
Yeah, yeah.
Really can do the back down forward. Down neutral forward. Why are you so hard to do? Oh. Armor King. Loisa. Loisa. Oh, it's not lagging. I just want a nice match.
Round
Like
one.
a stage. Ooh, that's nice. Combination. What the? Can I use it?
KO. Round two.
Here's a problem. Is it because I'm streaming on Facebook right now? It's probably because I'm streaming on Facebook. Yeah, won't care. Some people want it all, but I just nothing at all.
KO.
And they ain't gonna use
Round
it,
three.
baby.
Fight.
Let's just do our thing.
KO.
Alright. I'm gonna
You win.
Você tem técnica, mas
I'm
não tem
gonna
alma.
go to the lobby first and then let's remove Facebook on the stream. Did it quit? Then I'm gonna have to restart the stream. Yeah, I think it quit. That's probably